Okay, we're going to do an activity in class for the next couple of days, and I want you to, this is an intro to give you an idea of how it's done. So I would watch this video a couple of times if you can't get it, but just watch what's going on here. First thing I want you to do is, you'll be given a big piece of poster board, okay, and somewhere on the poster board, out of the way, kind of in the top center, top left corner or something like that, make a circle of a reasonable length radius. Don't make it too big or too small. Just make it a reasonable length circle, a reasonable size circle. Okay. Once you've created your circle, then in the same place, make your horizontal axis through the center. Make sure you keep track of where your center is, and make your vertical axis, and make sure that that's a 90-degree angle. So make it straight up. Okay. So make sure that's 90 degrees. So that's your vertical axis. Now once you've done that, then you take your compass, and now you do your special angles. You start with 0. Zero's here, 30, 45, 60, 90. Make little tick marks there. Mark out the angles. Then it's over 120, 135, 150, 180. Make sure you get all those tick marks. Then you want to turn your compass up, or protractor upside down to get these angles. Make sure this is on the center of your circle. Get these angles, 30, 45, 60, 120, 135, 150, and make those tick marks. Then once you've done the tick marks, then you take your straight edge and you connect from the center to the circumference of the circle as you go around all those angles. So your final picture should look something like this. Okay? Once you've done that, now it's a difficult part. Now's the part you need to have your partner to help you out. All right? You can work together on all of this, but this is where your partner is really helpful. Okay? So take your string, make sure it's stretched a little bit tight as you go around. Put your string on the X, right on this chord, this point here, and then trace out the circumference of the circle with your finger. And when you get to the next point, then have your partner put a little red dot or black dot or whatever you have on that point on the string. Make sure your string's stretched out because it's a little bit stretchy. Then it doesn't matter what happens with this piece of the string. Go to the next dot, and as accurately as you can, trace out the circumference of the circle till you get to the next dot. And you keep doing that all the way around the circle. Okay? Do it until you get all the way around, and then back up to the beginning again. All right? So when you're done, you should have something that looks like this. It has a bunch of red dots on it. Those represent all of the points on the circumference of the circle. When you do that, that makes this next stage very easily. So you take this, now you create an axis. Create an axis, a horizontal axis. Now this is going to represent theta. The horizontal axis is going to represent theta. And that's what these marks on the string are. They're the angles. They're the x coordinates, or they're the angles as you go around the circle. So you take your first dot, take your first dot there, stretch your string out, and everywhere you have one of your dots, you put a tick mark on your axis. Now your poster board will be a little bit bigger than this, so you can make it longer that way. So everywhere you see a dot on your string, you make a little tick mark. Now those represent the radians: pi over 6, pi over 4, pi over 3, pi over 2, etc. as you go across. So make sure these are in radians. Okay? Now's the fun part. So you go back to your original circle, and for each point on the circle, you make the spaghetti. Make the spaghetti go from the x-axis to the end point there. And then what I suggest you do, just to make the breaking a little bit easier, you make a little point on the spaghetti. That makes it break right at that point, which is nice. So that makes it break right there. Now you go back to your axes, and on that first point, that first dot, you put your spaghetti there. And you take a little bit of glue and you glue that in place. Okay? Then you go to the next dot on the circle. So you're moving perpendicular this way. And when you get to this point, so now you're going through the next dot. Again, make a little mark on the spaghetti where you want to break it. Carefully break it. And then go back to your axes and put that piece of spaghetti on. Okay? So you trace out the spaghetti as you go around the circle. Now, remember that if you're above the x-axis, that means that the y is positive. If you come over here and you're below the x-axis, that means your y is negative. So on your graph, when it comes to the point where the point is negative, make sure you put your spaghetti below the x-axis as you mark that. Cosine is a little bit different. So y is the sine value. Cosine is the x value, if you remember. So if you're going around the circle, cosine represents the x value. So instead of doing it vertically, you do each point horizontally. So you come up to this first tick, start with 0, and I have one for that. Start with 0, so that's the first length. So that's your 0. Then you go back to the axes, and 0 you glue that spaghetti in place. So for the cosine, you make a completely separate, different axis. So you make one axis for sine, and then you make another axis for theta and x. So then you make your spaghetti there. Or sorry, this was 0, so that's there. Go back, and now you're measuring horizontally. So so you slide here. Now your first point is this distance. So you make your spaghetti length this distance, and you come back to your axes again. And now that first point represents here, and you'll see that the graph comes down to there. Okay? So that should be that should help you figure out what you have to do in this. If you need to, watch this a couple of times so you make sure you understand what to do. I'm not going to give a lot of direction in class, and it'll make it a lot easier if you work together and both people have watched the video. So I'll team you up tomorrow, and enjoy the activity.